Imagine watching your friends turned into prey while you hide, powerless, in the shadows. The monster laughed, snapping their lives like dry twigs. To survive, I became nobody and blinded a god's son. I escaped that hell, but now the sea itself hungers for my blood. Witness the price of my pride.
Forget marble statues. The ancient world was a grim spectacle, run by divine hunters who demanded human sacrifice and destroyed lives on a whim. We're peeling back the layers of their madness. This is Shroud of Lore.
The Shadow of Poseidon. Chapter 1. Having passed through bloody battle and the poison of oblivion, we became prey for a savage giant. Blinding the monster, I forever enraged the gods, condemning us to eternal torment upon the endless sea. These were the words Odysseus would speak in the years to come, if he survived long enough to speak them. But now, standing on the deck of his ship with salt wind cutting his face, he had no idea how completely those words would come to define him. The nightmare had started 3 days ago. His fleet had barely escaped the land of the Lotus Eaters, where sweet fruit turned warriors into drooling husks. Odysseus had found his scout Elpenor sitting cross-legged in the dirt, tears of joy streaming down his face, mumbling about how he never wanted to leave. He'd had to knock the man unconscious and drag him to the ship like a sack of grain. Before that, the Cicones. A simple raid that turned into a bloodbath when enemy reinforcements arrived at dawn. 72 men dead on the beach. 72 families in Ithaca who would never see their fathers and sons again. Now this. The island rose from the morning mist like a broken tooth, and something about it made Odysseus's stomach clench. Columns of smoke twisted up from caves carved into the mountainside. Not cooking fires, but bonfires. Whatever lived there was large. "We have food. We have water." Eurylochus stood at his shoulder, voice carefully neutral. "There's no need to stop." Odysseus said nothing. His hand found the wineskin at his belt, a gift from Marin, priest of Apollo, who had begged him to spare his family during the Cicones raid. The wine inside was impossibly potent. Marin had sworn that 1 cup mixed with 20 cups of water would still make a man drunk. Why had he kept it? He did not know, but something told him to bring it now. "The men are afraid," Eurylochus pressed. "After the Lotus Eaters, after everything. The men are always afraid." Odysseus turned to face his second, and something in his eyes made the older warrior step back. "Do you know what I keep thinking about, Eurylochus? My son, Telemachus. He was an infant when I left for Troy. He's 11 now, 11 years old, and he does not know my face. All the more reason to sail home." Home to what? The word came out sharper than Odysseus intended. "To tell my son that his father spent a decade at war, and then another year running from every shadow on the way back. That the great Odysseus, sacker of cities, was too frightened to set foot on a single strange shore." The real truth was uglier, and Odysseus knew it. After 10 years of being the smartest man in every room, after single-handedly winning the war with his wooden horse, he felt himself fading. Each day at sea, he became less of a legend and more of just another tired captain trying to get home. He needed to prove, to himself, to his men, to whatever gods were watching, that he was still Odysseus. 12 men, he said quietly. "We take 1 boat. We look. We take guest gifts if they're offered, and we leave." Simple. It was not simple. They both knew it. But Eurylochus had followed Odysseus through 10 years of war, and he was not going to stop now. The cave they found made Odysseus's breath catch. The entrance yawned wide enough to swallow their ship whole. Inside, firelight revealed a space the size of a temple, and provisions to match. Wheels of cheese bigger than chariot wheels. Pens of sheep with wool thick as blankets. Bowls of milk that a man could bathe in. "By all the gods," whispered Polites, Odysseus's youngest lieutenant. "What lives here?" Eurylochus was already backing toward the entrance. "Nothing we want to meet. Take what we can carry. Move." But Odysseus had noticed something else. On the cave wall, Scratched into stone by a tool the size of a tree trunk was a mark he recognized. A trident, Poseidon's symbol. A wise man would have run. But Odysseus had stopped being wise somewhere between Troy and the Lotus Eaters' shore. "We wait," he said. "I want to meet our host." "Odysseus, that's an order." They waited. The sun crept across the cave mouth. The men grew restless, then nervous, then openly afraid. Odysseus sat apart from them, turning the wineskin in his hands, running his fingers over the trident on the wall again and again. When the shadow fell across the entrance, it was like an eclipse. The giant had to crouch to enter his own home. His single eye, one enormous, unblinking eye in the center of his forehead, swept the cave and found the Greeks immediately. For a moment, everything was still. Then Odysseus did what he had done 1,000 times at Troy. He stepped forward, raised his hands in the gesture of peace, and spoke with the confidence of a king. "Mighty One, we are Greeks returning from the war at Troy. We come as suppliants, protected by Zeus himself, asking only for the hospitality that—" The boulder hit the cave mouth with a sound like the world ending. "Zeus?" The giant's laugh sent the sheep scrambling in their pens. "Little man, we Cyclops were ancient when Zeus was still crying for his mother's milk. Your gods mean nothing here." He moved faster than something that large should move. His hand shot out and grabbed Pylades, young Pylades, who had a wife waiting in Ithaca, who had survived every battle of the war, and Antiphus beside him. What happened next would haunt Odysseus until his dying day. The giant killed them the way a man swats flies, casually, without thought. Odysseus heard himself screaming. He heard his men screaming. He drew his sword and rushed at the monster's ankle, hacking at flesh that felt like oak tree bark. The blade barely drew blood. The Cyclops did not even look down. He was eating. When it was over, when the giant lay snoring with human blood still wet on his chin, Odysseus stood over him with his sword raised. The firelight threw his shadow across the monster's throat like a blade already falling. One thrust. That was all. Avenge Pylades and Antiphus. End this nightmare. His arm would not move, because even now, even half mad with grief and rage, his mind kept working. The boulder. If he killed the Cyclops, they would die here too. They would starve in a tomb they had built themselves, all because he could not resist his own curiosity. The sword clattered to the ground. Odysseus fell to his knees beside it, and for the first time in a decade, the great strategist of Troy had no idea what to do. Chapter 2. Dawn came like a wound opening. Odysseus had not slept. He had spent the night crawling through the cave on his hands and knees, searching for another exit, testing every shadow and crevice. Nothing. The Cyclops had chosen his home well. 10 men remained. 10 faces staring at him in the gray light, waiting for the plan that would save them. That was what Odysseus did, was not it? He made plans. He found the path that no one else could see. But his mind was empty. All he could see was Pylades' face in that final moment. The surprise, the betrayal, the silent question. "Why did you bring us here?" The Cyclops stirred. "Good morning, little mice." The giant's grin was terrible, crusted with the evidence of last night's feast. "I dreamed about breakfast." He took 2 more. Odysseus did not know their names. They were rowers from another ship, men who had volunteered for what they thought would be a simple scouting mission. He forced himself to watch. He owed them that much. When the giant rolled the boulder aside to let out his flock, Odysseus saw his men tense. Maybe they could rush the entrance. Maybe if they all ran at once. The Cyclops laughed as if reading their thoughts. "Try it, please." He positioned himself in the gap, filling it completely. "I have not had sport in so long." The flock filed out between his legs. The boulder rolled back. Darkness returned. 8 men left. Odysseus found the stake almost by accident, a massive piece of olive wood, as thick as a ship's mast, discarded near the sheep pens. A walking stick for the giant. In his hands, it felt like destiny. "Sharpen this," he told his men. Harden the point in the fire. Do not ask me why yet, just do it." While they worked, Odysseus sat apart, turning the wineskin in his hands. Marin had given him enough to fill 3 skins. Strong enough, the priest had said, to make a man forget his own name. His own name. The idea struck him like lightning, and for the first time since the boulders sealed their tomb, Odysseus smiled. That evening, when the Cyclops returned and selected 2 more men for his dinner, Odysseus forced himself to watch again, burning each face into memory. The King of Ithaca approached with the wineskin raised. "Great Cyclops." His voice was steady. He had rehearsed this moment all day. "You've shown us your strength. Will you not let us show you our finest treasure? This wine comes from the temples of the gods themselves. We brought it as a gift for whoever ruled this island." The giant's eye narrowed. "A gift? After I've eaten your friends? We're dead men regardless. At least let us die knowing we honored our host." Something in the Cyclops' face changed, not softening, but curiosity. The same cursed curiosity that had brought Odysseus into this cave. He snatched the wineskin and drained it in 3 swallows. His eye went wide. "More, give me more of this." Odysseus handed over the 2nd skin, then the 3rd. He watched the giant's movements grow clumsy, watched that terrible eye begin to drift. "What's your name, little man?" The Cyclops was slurring now. "Tell me your name and I'll give you a guest gift after all." This was the moment. Odysseus felt his heart pounding against his ribs. "My name is Nobody." He spoke slowly, carefully, planting each word like a seed. "My mother and father call me Nobody. So do all my companions." "Nobody." The giant laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Here's my guest gift then. I'll eat nobody last. Last of all." He collapsed backward, unconscious, wine and drool spilling from his slack mouth. Odysseus moved before the body stopped falling. "Now, do it now." They pulled the stake from its hiding place. 6 men gripped the massive wood while Odysseus guided the sharpened point into the fire. The tip glowed red, then orange, then white. "Aim for the center," Odysseus whispered. "We only get one chance." They charged forward and buried the stake deep into the monster's eye. The scream that tore from the Cyclops' throat was like nothing Odysseus had ever heard, not on any battlefield, not in any nightmare. It shattered something inside him, some wall he'd built between himself and the full horror of what he'd done. The giant thrashed. His arms swept the cave like battering rams. Odysseus dove and rolled, shouting for his men to scatter, to press against the walls, to become shadows. "Help! Murder!" The Cyclops' wails echoed into the night. His brothers answered, their voices like distant thunder. "Polyphemus! What's wrong? Who attacks you?" And the blinded giant roared back through his agony. "Nobody! Nobody is killing me! Nobody has destroyed my eye!" Silence outside. Then grumbling, fading voices. A nightmare, they concluded. A fit of madness. Their brother would recover by morning. Odysseus pressed his back against the cold stone and let himself breathe. It worked. His desperate gamble, his ridiculous pun, it worked. Then he counted heads. 6 men, not 8. During the thrashing, during the chaos, 2 more had fallen. Crushed against the cave wall by a flailing arm, their bodies broken beyond recognition. 6 out of 12. Half his crew, dead for his curiosity. And they were still trapped. The blind Cyclops had dragged himself to the boulder and sat against it now, his ruined eye socket weeping dark fluid, his hands spread across the stone like a spider waiting in its web. "When dawn comes," Polyphemus snarled, "I'll feel every sheep that passes. I'll catch every one of you, and I will not eat you quickly. I swear it on my father's blood." Odysseus stared at the monster and felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Who is your father?" "Poseidon." The giant's voice was thick with pain and hatred. "God of the sea, shaker of the earth. My father will avenge me, little nobody. Wherever you sail, wherever you run, the sea will find you." The last piece clicked into place. Odysseus understood now what the trident on the wall had been trying to tell him. He had not stumbled into a monster's den. He had invaded a god's family. Chapter 3. The night lasted 1,000 years. Odysseus spent it with his hands buried in sheep's wool, working by feel in the darkness, tying knots he could not see. Around him, his remaining men huddled in silence. There was nothing left to say. By the time gray light began to seep around the boulder's edges, Odysseus had his answer. "Not on their backs," he whispered. "Underneath. Tie yourselves to their bellies, hidden in the wool. He'll check above. He won't not think to feel below." "That's insane," someone muttered. "Would you rather stay here?" Nobody answered. They worked quickly, strapping themselves beneath the largest rams. The wool was thick enough to hide a man completely if he curled tight. Odysseus saved the biggest animal for himself, the Cyclops prize ram, a beast the size of a small horse. The boulder rolled away. Morning flooded in like a second chance. The blind giant positioned himself in the entrance, his hands extended, still weeping from his ruined face. The sheep began to file out, and he lifted each one, running his palms over their backs, their sides, searching for Greeks clinging to their wool. One by one, Odysseus' men passed through. He heard no screams, no crunching sounds. One by one, they escaped. Then it was his turn. The great ram walked slowly, burdened by Odysseus' weight. When Polyphemus' hands descended, Odysseus stopped breathing. The fingers traced every curve of the ram's back. They brushed the wool along its flanks. They came close, so close to the place where Odysseus hung suspended, his heart thundering against the animal's belly. Then the hands withdrew. "Poor old friend." The giant's voice cracked with something almost like tenderness. "You've never walked last before. Are you mourning your master's eye? The eye that nobody destroyed?" The ram walked forward. Odysseus felt sunlight on his face and had to bite his tongue to keep from crying out in relief. They ran for the ship. Odysseus's men were already there, casting off lines, fitting oars to locks. The stolen flock bleated in confusion as they were herded aboard. The hull scraped sand, and then they were moving, pulling for the open sea with every ounce of strength their battered bodies possessed. 100 yards, 200. The shore began to shrink. Odysseus should have let it go. Every instinct screamed at him to stay silent, to let the distance grow, to vanish into the morning haze and thank whatever gods still favored him. But something in him could not bear it. Polites' face, Antiphus, the men whose names he never learned. 6 bodies left behind in a monster's larder because Odysseus, the great Odysseus, could not resist proving how clever he was. And what had he proven? That nobody could defeat a giant. That was the story that would survive. Nobody did this. Nobody won. All his brilliance, his desperate gamble, his men's sacrifice, reduced to an anonymous punchline. No, he refused. If he was going to carry this guilt for the rest of his life, then at least the world would know who had earned it. He stood at the stern, and his voice carried across the water like a war horn. "Cyclops!" On the shore, the blind giant turned toward the sound. His face was a ruin of blood and rage. "You ask who blinded you? It was not nobody. It was Odysseus, King of Ithaca, son of Laertes, conqueror of Troy. Remember my name." The scream that answered him barely sounded human. Polyphemus's hands found a boulder, a massive chunk of cliff face, and hurled it with a strength born of divine fury. It crashed into the sea close enough to drench the ship, close enough to rock it violently to one side. "Odysseus of Ithaca," the giant howled, "I know you now." "Row!" Eurylochus screamed. "For your lives, row!" But Odysseus was not finished. The madness had him completely now. "Tell your father, tell Poseidon himself, Odysseus defeated his son. Odysseus!" A second boulder, this one closer. The wave it created spun the ship like a child's toy. Then the giant's voice rose, not in rage, but in prayer. And the prayer was worse. "Father, Father Poseidon, Lord of the deep, hear your son. If you have ever loved me, if I am truly your blood, grant me this curse. Let Odysseus never reach his home, or if the fates demand his return, let it be late and broken. Let all his companions perish. Let him find only misery waiting." The sky did not change. The sea did not surge. But Odysseus felt something fundamental shift beneath them, a withdrawal, as if the ocean itself had taken notice and found him wanting. He had wanted glory. He had wanted his name back. Now a god knew his name, and gods never forgot. Chapter 4. For 3 days, the winds refused to cooperate. They should have been home by now. Ithaca was days away, weeks at most, with favorable conditions. Instead, every breeze pushed them sideways. Every current dragged them further from their course. Odysseus stood at the prow and felt the wrongness in his bones. His men would not look at him, not directly. They did their work, they manned their oars, but their eyes slid away whenever he approached. He could not blame them. They had followed him into that cave, and half of them had never walked out. On the 4th morning, Eurylochus finally broke the silence. "The men are talking about the curse." "Let them talk. They're talking about throwing you overboard, appeasing Poseidon." Odysseus turned slowly. His second's face was carefully blank, the face of a man delivering information, not making threats. But the message was clear. "And what do you think?" Eurylochus was quiet for a long moment. "I think you're the reason any of us are alive at all. You got us out of that cave when we were dead men. I will not forget that." He paused. "But I will not forget Pylades either, or the others." He walked away, leaving Odysseus alone with the wind and the watching sea. That night, unable to sleep, Odysseus climbed to the highest point of the ship and sat beneath the stars. They were the same stars he had steered by for 10 years at Troy, the same ones that had guided him through storms and battles and the thousand small horrors of war. They seemed dimmer now, or maybe he had just stopped knowing how to read them. "I could have sailed past." He said it aloud, tasting each word, the confession he had not been able to make to anyone else. "I could have taken the food and run. I could have stayed nobody. I could have..." What? Been someone else? Someone without the pride that had built the wooden horse, that had ended a decade-long war with a single night's deception. That was the trap, wasn't it? The same qualities that made him great were the ones that had doomed his men. His curiosity, his cleverness, his absolute refusal to let a mystery go unsolved or a victory go unclaimed. Troy had rewarded those qualities. The Cyclops' cave had punished them. And now the sea itself had turned against him because he could not keep his own name out of his mouth. Odysseus closed his eyes and saw Pylades' face again. The young man's expression in that final moment, not fear, but confusion. "Why are we here?" that look had asked. What was so important that we had to see? Nothing. That was the answer. Nothing had been important enough. He had gambled with their lives on a whim, and they had paid the price. "I'm sorry." The words disappeared into the wind. Too small. Too late. But something in Odysseus shifted as he spoke them. Not forgiveness. He would never forgive himself, and the dead certainly could not offer absolution. But acceptance, maybe. Understanding. He was Odysseus. He was brilliant and proud and incapable of leaving well enough alone. These things had made him a hero at Troy and a villain in Polyphemus' cave, and they would probably get more men killed before this voyage ended. But they were also the things that would get him home. Because if Poseidon wanted him dead, the god would have to catch him first. And Odysseus had been outsmarting enemies since before the Earthshaker's sun was a gleam in a divine eye. He stood up, feeling the ship rock beneath him, and walked back to the helm. The other captains would need orders. The fleet would need a new course, somewhere to resupply, to gather strength, to plan. And somewhere out there, beyond storms he could not yet imagine, Ithaca waited. 10 years. He said it to the darkness, to the sea, to whatever was listening. You can throw 10 years of horrors at me. You can take my men, my ships, my hope, but I will see my wife again. I will hold my son. I will walk the halls of my own palace if I have to crawl there through the gates of the underworld itself. The wind shifted. For a moment, just a moment, it almost seemed to blow toward home. Then it died, and the sails hung slack, and the sea stretched out before him like an enemy preparing to attack. Odysseus smiled grimly. Nobody had beaten the Cyclops, but it would be Odysseus who survived the sea, and that, he realized, was exactly how it should be. His pride had started this war. His pride would have to finish it. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. The water whispered against the hull with the voice of a god's anger. Somewhere behind him, his men slept the restless sleep of the cursed. Somewhere ahead, 10 years of suffering waited to unfold, and Odysseus, King of Ithaca, stood alone at the helm of his ship and faced the darkness without flinching. He had chosen this. Every step of the way, he had chosen. Now he would learn what his choices would cost.